Hello, welcome to Team Leadership Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Cecilia Martin. To my faithful listeners, team players, and subscribers around the world, I want to give a shout out to Brazil and India, Japan, Denmark, Nigeria, Indonesia, Ecuador, and the Philippines. Thank you so much for tuning in. You don't know, I appreciate you guys so much. Listen, guys, today I have a true fire starter. So you might as well buckle up, okay? And we're already going to consider this part one, all right? Because we're going to have to circle back. We have a lot to unpack. That's all I have to say. I have with me today none other than Dr. Ashonta Wyatt, who is an education and social justice advocate who currently serves as the chief consultant of Wyatt Solutions Group. Wyatt Solutions Group is a consulting firm that provides professional development and coaching to individuals and organizations to increase organizational effectiveness. The company also provides for a broad range of advocacy services on behalf of marginalized communities. Now, Dr. Wyatt, she is a parent, former principal, community servant, and graduate of Edna Karr Magnet High School. She has a bachelor's degree from the University of New Orleans and a master's and doctorate degree in educational leadership from Xavier University of Louisiana. Dr. Wyatt believes it is her duty to help dismantle systems that perpetuate and benefit from our oppression. Dr. Wyatt, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's odd to listen to your own bio.
I know, right? It feels like weird, right? Like, talking about me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's, like I said at the beginning, there's so much to unpack. We'll get as far as we can. I know you have other appointments. So first of all, we know you're from New Orleans.
Yes.
What was it like growing up there? Was it drastically different from how we see New Orleans today?
It has its similarities and its differences. Right now we're besieged by youth violence. And there was violence when I was growing up. But as I would tell anybody, I firmly believe that there was a code, an unspoken code to how you maneuvered in this world if you were doing less than desirable things. There was a code to not harm women and children. There was a code to not do any drug dealing around schools. Like it's weird to hear people say, but some of our people who were doing less than desirable things still had a morality clause about themselves and they governed themselves accordingly. And I think we've lost sight of that because crime is inevitable, right? But it's the type of crime we're seeing. It's the ages of the people who are out here committing the violence. It's the victims of the crime. I mean, we're killing 7-year-old children. We're killing 31-year-old mothers with 3 and 4 kids in a car, and so, there's some similarities about the way I grew up in New Orleans. It's always been, a violent place, for lack of a better word at this moment. But I believe that our violence was tamed somehow by a code of ethics, whether you could subscribe to that or not. That's just the way it was.
Sure.
And I think,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can relate because it seems like today we're preying on the vulnerable, the children, the senior citizens, and that, like you said, there seems to be no honor.
Well, I liken that, Dr. Cecilia, I liken that to a degradation of community, right? And so when you devalue things, everything that is supposed to help a person thrive, when you devalue them by stripping them of those resources, then in some circumstances, you're forcing people into dire situations, and desperate people do desperate things. And so I don't believe we will incarcerate our way out of criminality. I don't think that we could police our way out of it. I think we have to get back to the foundation of who we are as people, and that's loving each other and respecting each other as human beings. No matter how I choose to live, if it differs from how you choose to live, there's still a respect for the right to live how you want to live, as long as you're not infringing upon the rights of other people, as long as you're not endangering other people. And I think we've strayed so far away from that because as a country, we're going in a rapidly declining direction. And we're degrading humanity, we're degrading people, and the outcomes of those types of situations is violence. You know, wherever you see extreme poverty, you're going to see violence. Wherever you see a lack of a solid school system, you're going to see violence. When people have a hard time paying for rent, you're going to see violence. So these are the resources that I'm talking about. If you put the resources in the places they need to be, then people are less inclined to do things to make ends meet because our systems are working. And right now in New Orleans, our systems are broken. And so, yeah, we see similarities, but there's a whole bunch of differences in the New Orleans I grew up in and the New Orleans I see today.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of which, you have been such a strong advocate for the city itself, for the state of Louisiana. I want to get to at some point. I heard you say in a talk that you're not from NOLA, you're from New Orleans.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, because I think words matter. I think
Mm-hmm.
the intent behind words matter, and we're going through a cultural gentrification in New Orleans, and a lot of people who are not from here, not homegrown, they've come here, bought property here, and they want to change the way the very cultural fabric of New Orleans. What I also said in that speech is they want our culture, but they don't want its people. And I really mean that, because you want everything that's beautiful about New Orleans, but you don't want the native New Orleanians to be here to benefit from that culture. It's a culture we built. So you want to be able to bask in it, but you don't want to share it with its indigenous people. And that's the problem. And so I think NOLA is a very gentrified term. And I think they use it with the intent to be a gentrifier, right? It's like you're trying to reimagine New Orleans by calling it NOLA. And I push back very hard against that, so I just want people to honor who we are as people, honor the land that you found here, honor the culture that you found, our music, our food, all of that, is at the hands of the most marginalized people are cooking those meals,
That's
are
right.
playing up the saxophone in that band that you like, beating the drums in the French Quarter that you like to hear. Those are all people that the system is trying very hard to erase. And if you respected the culture of New Orleans, you will honor it by keeping a lot of that alive and keeping the people here to enjoy it. You can't take our city and push us out and then just reimagine it as NOLA. This is New Orleans, and I'm from New Orleans, and I'm gonna stand firm and fighting for what is culturally ours, so that people who are indigenous to this community could benefit from all of its work.
Yes.
That's how I feel.
I'm telling you, preaching. So listen, the people need to hear the speech itself. It's about 6 minutes. Let's talk about it a little bit. You were addressing the New Orleans City Council, and the clip from that video went viral. It has over 180,000 views and 50,000 shares and 100,000 comments, and I mean it's just all over the place. So set this up for us before we listen to the actual audio that I'm gonna play it. Was this your first time having public comments? Why were you there? What set the stage for us a little bit?
No, so it definitely wasn't my first time. I'm always trying to stand in the gap for my community. So it wasn't my first time. And actually, what you heard is not what I went up there to say.
Okay.
Something just came over me, and I just felt like unmasking things, because we will never fix issues if we keep pretending that these issues don't exist, or if they're not real, or if they're not in crisis mode. And I, after seeing a lot of the turmoil that was going on in the meeting prior to me speaking, it changed the direction of what I had to say, because the system has created it insulated itself so much that it has individuals fighting each other instead of fighting together against a broken system. And so that's what I saw. And so I called it out. And I'm like, all of y'all up here know what's going on. You know what the situation is, right? And it just kind of went from there. It's like, stop pretending to solve a problem. Stop playing dress up. Stop putting lipstick on a pig. Stop putting a Band-Aid on the bullet wound. I just lost it. I really did. I lost it because I got so unnerved by the performative feelings that I was getting. It was just like, let's just hear them out. Let's just pretend we're listening, and we'll just go about our day. Like, children are dying. our ancestors are living, our elders are living on toxic soil. Like the city is burning, and that's the that's the fire that I felt when I went to the mic. And I honestly can tell you, I didn't even know what was going to come out of my mouth. It just took on a life of its own.
From TikTok to every place else, people were singing your praises because you were saying what people were thinking. So let's listen to the clip.
Dr. Wyatt, please speak whenever you're ready.
I came up here with something to say. I'm still going to say it, but I think that this is indicative of what our children witness, and the reason why our children act the way they act, because we are the exemplars for their behavior. And I think to have grown Black men creating a circus with the cameras here tells our children that they could participate in the circus. But the problem is you only blame the children when you created the circus. We went from integration to gentrifications all on the back of miseducation. So if you want to fix crime, fix the schools. I've been saying that for quite a long time. I hold a doctorate in education, yet I stand before you unemployed. I'm not unemployed because of white supremacy. I'm unemployed because of Black elitism.
My goodness.
In these New Orleans. See, I'm from New Orleans, 2035 Hindi Court, Apartment 3B. They call it the dark side of the Fisher Project. And they called it the dark side because that's where hope went to die. But I stand before you, the product of a formerly crack-addicted mother. My mother has been clean for 30 years. But I tell everybody she was on drugs because her story is my story. I'm the product of an absent father. So when you talk about it starts at home, I didn't have the foundation at home. My foundation came from school. So if you want to fix the crime problem, fix the schools. Let's talk about how I've applied for job after job, even at the places where nobody wants to work, the bridge cities and the JGICs. And Bridge City told me I was overqualified. But you have children breaking out and committing crimes every single day. I'm asking you to give me the children that you don't want. Let me have them. I'm asking you to get out of my way. White folk didn't do this to me. People who look just like me did this to me. When we talk about going looking for the pastor's votes when it's election time, a pastor did this to me. Some of y'all call him friend, and that's why y'all help him block me from jobs. Let's talk about the truth. You can't fix the children when you're hurting the children. I'm somebody's child too.
That's right.
When you talk about raising broken children, all they do is grow up into be broken men. I was a broken child who went to school, got educated, got my degrees, and I was re-broken by Black people in my city. I'm not from NOLA, I'm from New Orleans. You know, the place that y'all trying to make disappear because we are no longer desirable. You want our culture, but you don't want its people. Everybody want to talk about how to fix the crime, love the children.
Love the children.
Love the children. Somebody loved me. Somebody told me that I mattered. Even with your crackhead mama and your missing daddy, you matter. Somebody told me that. But y'all playing because y'all perpetuate this foolishness because you benefit from this foolishness. You have council people fighting the mayor. You have the mayor trying to fight against the council, but yet you want to tell the children don't fight. What is happening to Chief Woodford happened to me. She's qualified, but yet y'all got to go nationally to look for somebody, and I'm right here. And I'm asking you, give me the children that you don't want. Don't send them to jail. Send them to me.
Come on now.
I love them already. You know why I love them? Because I was them. I used to fight with my fists until somebody told me I matter. The children fighting for with guns because y'all ain't let them know they matter. That's the problem. I'm begging you for a job in my city where I was born, where I was educated, and I'm begging you to work and people can move here from the Oklahomas and the Ohio's and their children can get the best schools and they can move into the best communities. And I gotta beg you to work. The people came to seize my house. The house that I worked so hard to pay for because I don't have a job to pay the mortgage. And you want to sit here and talk bullshit? Give the children to me. You want to talk about crime? What is happening to me is criminal. What is happening to me is criminal. And they have children out there who love me. There's a community who love me. And I have people who pretend to respect me, blocking me from the ability to feed my son. It's criminal.
Mm-hmm.
Stop playing with the children's lives. You want the chaos because you benefit from the chaos. There's no reason why people have to beg for affordable housing and y'all throwing up Airbnbs like Oprah gave away cars. Stop playing with us. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired because everything I do for free because you don't want me to work. My voice is respected. Why don't you want to use it? You know why? Because then you got to look your friend in his face and tell him you wrong for what you did, that young lady. But you can't do that because you benefit from the chaos.
Mm.
You want the children to stop fighting? You better stop fighting first. You want the children to do better? You have to do better. Everybody wants to be somebody's someone. The children want somebody to love them, to see them, to value them, to encourage them, to treat them like they're human beings. If you treat them like animals, they will act like animals. You back a lion in the corner and I guarantee it's going to come out swinging.
But some of
Wow. Woo!
That's my first time listening to it.
Okay, because I could see the expression on your face and
Yeah.
some of the tears welling up. But honey, let me tell you, you have hundreds of thousands of people who were saying, "Yeah, what she said."
Mm-hmm.
She spoke truth. She spoke truth to power in that moment. What happened afterwards? I mean, was there any backlash? Did they? I know they had closed down some of the schools that were performing well behind, it seems, an individual who was responsible for finances, who were, I think, embezzling, mismanaging. He was actually convicted, confessed,
Yes.
and they
Yes.
still are the schools reopened now?
So he was in charge of one school, which was my school.
Okay.
And when I took the job knowing that the school was struggling because it was all in the media, right? But I still felt like, okay, I went to school to be a turnaround principal. And so this is the type of environment that I was trained for. And so I went in there with the hope of being able to apply everything that I learned in school to be able to improve outcomes for children. And so that's what I was doing. And then I very quickly realized that the dire situation that I thought we were in was a fabrication because the money was there. It just wasn't in the right place. And that is when I began to ask questions about why is there money going to individuals who are not employed by me? Why is the money in an account that is not governed by me? Like, it was just questions like that because I was acting as a CEO principal. So I should have had access to things that I didn't have access to. And I started to question these things. And I think that is what made him realize that the jig was up, right? It's like, okay, she knows. Yeah. But really and truly, I didn't know that he was doing it. I just knew something was wrong. And he was a pastor, so I trusted him, like he was the board president for my school, but he was also a very well-known pastor in my community. And so I just could not connect what I was seeing to understanding that he was the reason why it was happening. And I didn't know. And so I thought this was mismanagement at the level where I worked, not at the board. I just didn't know he was doing it. And when I realized he was doing it, he immediately moved to fire me because he didn't want the public to know that I knew, but I had already sounded the alarm before he fired me. Okay. And it started the media to investigate. And he's very well connected, very politically connected. So they insulated him and they protected him. And even though I had all of this evidence, I was made out to be the pariah and I was made out to be the outcast. And I have not worked in a principal role since then because his connections have made it such that I can't even get past the first round of applying for jobs. And it wasn't until 3 years later that I met with an FBI agent, and he was interested in what happened to me, and I told him what happened to me. And then 2 years after that, charges were brought up against him. He was indicted, tried, convicted.
Wow.
And he's now in prison for 5 years, which was almost the max. 63 months was the max that he was facing, and the judge gave him 60 months. And it was because of the work that I never stopped trying to make the truth come to light. And I paid a hefty price for it, because I am still to this very day unemployed.
Wow.
So nothing really happened other than the video going viral and people appreciating what I said, but it has not opened up any employment doors. It has not changed my circumstances in the least bit, but I am still standing and I'm still fighting on behalf of this community and its children. So that's never going to stop, with or without employment. So
my goodness, that is incredible. So in essence, you were a whistleblower.
yes,
There are laws in place that are supposed to protect whistleblowers.
there are. And the feds they tried everything they could, but there was no statute federally that could protect me, because I wasn't listed as a harmed party. The school was, but I personally wasn't listed as a harmed party. And so the feds couldn't do anything. And then locally, you would have to find somebody with the courage to stand up against this. It's a system, it's a machine, and nobody's willing to take my case. Nobody's willing to say, I'll help you, litigate this. I've tried, and it's just nobody wants to take the case. And so that's the hard part. But yeah, so there's been no recourse for me.
So would you consider, so I know that you have said that you are loyal to New Orleans for life. Would you consider moving out? I mean, is that an option for you in order to find viable employment? I know it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
Because you're giving your life in essence to the system. You grew up in the system, you matriculated through from, the time that you were a child all the way through post-secondary education. You've given back, you've advocated, you've served the community. It's just incredible that they are able to blackball you in this way. This doesn't seem fair. Do you feel any sense of vindication even with him being sentenced?
Well, to the people who love me, it was more so for them to exhale as well, because people loved me and supported me through this. And I know that wasn't easy for them. So I felt vindicated in a way that the people who supported me understood that they were standing on solid ground and supported me. It's not real vindication, because I was making 6 figures as a CEO principal, and to strip me of my livelihood, I went from making that to no income. It's been hard. It's been very hard. And so no, I don't feel vindicated in the way of being whole, but I feel vindicated in a way that now everybody knows the truth. Whether you want to accept it or not, the truth is the truth. The Department of Justice wouldn't side with me if I wasn't telling the truth. The federal government doesn't come for you unless there's a solid case against you. And so it's amazing how they know all of these things, but it's still some sort of blind loyalty to him. Because Dr. Martin, there were people very prominent in this community who wrote letters on his behalf to the judge asking for leniency, even though he stole from children and ruined my career. There were prominent people in my city, one being a council person who I was speaking directly to in that speech that you just played. He wrote a letter in support of him to ask for leniency because of all of the good he's done for the community. And, my answer to that was, everything that you did good was washed away when you decided to steal from kids. And that's how I feel.
So what's your path forward? Will you remain? Is it your desire to remain in New Orleans?
I think that is so hard. It's almost like grieving a death, right? And I think that's what I'm doing. I'm grieving the death of my career in New Orleans. And I have a son. He's a rising senior, so he has 1 year left of high school. And I've promised myself that when my son is done, if nothing has changed in my professional life here, I have to go, because I can't continue to love a city who just isn't loving me back. And that's what's happening in my case. I love New Orleans. I love, being here. I love the air here. I love the energy of our people here. But there's a cloud of dysfunction and criminality and it's almost mafia-like that has it just bogs you down and it weighs you down, and you just have to put it on a scale and weigh the pros and cons. And right now there are more things pushing me to leave than there are holding me here to stay. And it's hard for me to say that, but that's just the truth of it. I'm grieving the loss of what I thought my life's work was, which was to help revitalize my city and my community and my children. So that's hard.
I hear you loud and clear, because sometimes the death of an idea of what you thought your life would look like is harder than a physical death of sorts, because you really do have to reimagine life in general. And believe it or not, I know it sounds crazy, but your story, your path, your journey is helping so many. Just this conversation right now is helping so many people who too have to deal with the reality of the death of an idea of what they thought life would look like, their profession, their marriage, their children, and unfortunately in your circumstances, you have been victimized by the same system that victimized the children to some extent, or the gentleman that they allowed to stay in place. And continue. I'm sure maybe once he get out of jail, he'll probably get some support and get a job, and here you are, like you said. What I loved about this speech, you have no idea. There's so many layers to unpack, because you talked about, Black men who are supposed to be the exemplars in the life of our children. You talked about gentrification and the divide that it causes the community. And then, of course, the correlation we all know between education and crime.
Yes. Because that's the quiet part nobody wants you to say out loud, because if you're not familiar, New Orleans is the only parish in the entire United States that is 100% charter. So we don't have traditional public schools. Right. And this parish, your only choice is to attend a charter school. And so when 72% of your kids can't read on grade level, more than 50% of the schools are failing, and you have 11, 12, and 13-year-old children picking up guns, you're not going to tell me that the school system is not accountable for some of that. You're not going to tell me that, right? Because if our schools, I've not met many places where there's a solid school system that is thriving and is churning out productive citizens, and the murder rate is sky high. I don't know an environment like that. Right. It will be an oxymoron. Like it just does not go together. Like I've not seen any place where they do schools well and they're also besieged by crime, by youth violence. I've not seen a place like that. And so for me, I always want to tell the truth. It may not feel good to us to hear it, but unless and until we tell the truth, then we can't have real change and we can't find real answers, because we're fighting a faux problem. Like it's fabricated, because you're pretending that it's better than what it is. And so we're not attacking the problem with the sort of energy that it deserves, because we're pretending that it's better than what it is.
Yeah. And you even mentioned that and we've seen this happen in other urban settings. And like you said, I too, as an educator, have worked pretty much in every capacity, from pre-K to the state education, the state of education. It's not seen where there is a thriving educational system and a high rate of crime. Right. Like you said, it's usually the reverse,
Yes.
And so there is a very natural correlation there. But then there's something else you mentioned, which is the elephant in the room and the whispers that teachers, principals, and people who work for state education agencies talk about behind closed doors, and that is the people who benefit from the chaos,
Yes.
who
Yes.
benefit from the broken system.
Yes.
It kind of boils down to economics to some extent, and it's a
Yes.
shame because it goes back to where you started with how we're preying on to some, and that we know not everyone is doing this, but there are too many of the bad apples that are preying on the demise and failure
Yeah.
of our children.
Yeah. And the thing about it is I did a segment for the news it's called Wounded City.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on there with somebody from the mayor's office, somebody from the police department, the council people, and I was the only citizen, representing the community voice at the table. And they were talking about streets and buildings and roads and all of this. And I sat there and the very first comment I said was, everybody want to talk about infrastructure, but the infrastructure that is invaluable to this community is its people. Nobody's talking about the people. You can have all the roads you want. You can have the best buildings, all you want. If you do not take care of your people, the buildings will collapse. The roads will tumble, because it takes leveraging people, human capital, to make cities thrive. And you show people you don't care about them by continuing to force $7.25 an hour on them, forcing them into servitude, forcing them into low wage paying jobs and degraded housing. And it's almost like insanity to sit here and think that people don't know what they're doing wrong to this community. You know what you're doing wrong, but you benefit from doing wrong. That is why you continue to do wrong, because it's profitable. That's just the facts. The facts. That's the facts. If it wasn't lucrative, they would do something different. But it makes a whole lot of money to disservice children, to disservice communities, to pretend to fix a problem so that you can create a problem, so you can create your solution to the problem that you created. It's money in it. It's money. You can hand out contracts to your friends, and you could get your kickback on the back end from your friend from making sure they get the contract, right? That's the reason why folks can move in our communities and pretend to build affordable housing. And then when they get the contract and they get the city block grant funding for it, then they can say, oh, we changed our minds. We want to, make this into some uber expensive townhomes that the regular people can't afford. That's what they do. They let these people secure this land. They get this funding, promising that they're going to do right by the community. And then they could just change their mind, or let the people live there for 2 or 3 years and then say, okay, enough of that. We're going to raise your rent. And then you push people out so that you can get the people you actually built the buildings for to move in. That's the game that they're playing on us in broad daylight.
Wow.
Right in front of our face.
I hear you loud and clear. There's so much work to be done. There's so much work to be done. And I'm hoping that someone hears this and will see you as part of the solution. Okay. And speaking of which, Wyatt Solutions Group.
Yes.
Break down to me what services you provide, and also I want to know how people can reach you, because as a turnaround principal, right?
Yes.
That is extraordinary work. I was a turnaround specialist for a large urban school district. And it's also, though, to me, it was the most valuable work to see schools come out of a failing status, to see them improve in their scores, to improve the culture, the climate, the partnerships and family engagement. I mean, that's where the real work is, because if you do it right, I know someone, in fact, who's a principal, when you do it right, you see that school come out of the depths of
absolutely,
and they begin to thrive. And then guess what? You can move on to another failing school to do the same thing.
Which Dr. Martin, is why it's not magic, right? It's not rocket science. People who are turnaround specialists understand that you see an issue and you put a plan together to attack that issue. And that is how you turn a school around, right? You don't turn it around pretending to do the work. You have to actually do the work. That is how I know, without a shadow of a doubt, a lot of this is performative. They're not really doing school here, which is why it's so evidently falling apart, because you're not providing services to our most vulnerable populations of children. This city is still reeling from the trauma of Katrina. And then we were hit by Ida, then we have a murder issue. So it's trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, and none of it is addressed. But yet you want people to go out and pretend like everything is normal. It's not normal to go have an issue and it's manifesting itself inside of you, and you can't talk about it. There's nobody to listen to you. Nobody values what you have to say. And so you suppress it and you suppress it and you suppress it, and then you pop. And everybody's like, oh my God, what's wrong with him? Well, that is years and years and years of ignoring, being pushed to the side, being devalued, being, and marginalized, and it's showing itself. That's all that there is. Turnaround principles are not doing magic. Turnaround principles are not afraid to go into environments that are very challenging.
That's right.
Turnaround principles have skill sets to build leaders. So you asked me what my firm does. We leverage human capital. And so what I say by that is I help do professional development for organizations, namely schools. I do coaching for organizations, namely schools. I teach strategies to novice teachers so that they can know how to handle classrooms, because it's only so much Harry Wong is going to teach you about the first 100 days of school in the textbook. It's about applying things and not theorizing them, right? Classroom management is a theory to most people, but when you know how to apply the theory that you've learned, then that is when you are successful at that thing. But just holding the book in your class and referencing it when you feel like something is wrong, it's not going to teach you anything. If you want to see what professional development or what classroom management looks like, go shadow somebody that does it well. Right? Or let somebody come into the room and shadow you and give you pointers about how to do it well. The number one thing that I tell all educators about classroom management is you cannot fear the children. They will smell it. They will smell it. You have to command the room such that it is yours. Every room I step in, I command it such that it's mine. That's how I operate, right? Proximity control is the easiest thing. When you see something happening in a classroom that you feel that you don't want to happen, move closer to that thing, because when you move closer to it, the children are less likely to do it, right? You can't run a classroom from your desk because you can't see everything, so just walking around and progress monitoring things is simple stuff. It's not rocket science. But if all you've ever done is you read progress monitoring in a book and you never actually saw what it looks like, it's going to be very, very hard to be an effective educator fresh out of college or fresh out of a different profession and thinking that you have a handle on this. Because what I can tell you after being in this profession for more than 20 years is the children are different. They're very different. But different doesn't have to be a negative thing. Different just means we have to sharpen our knives, right? Because what we learned 20 years ago, it's not working right now. So we have to figure out what moves the children, what motivates them, what gets their attention, and figure out how to take that and put it into our classroom so that learning is engaging. We worksheet our children to death and then wonder why their reading scores are dropping or their engagement is dropping or their motivation is dropping because they're tired of seeing the same worksheet, just different words on the paper every day. They're tired of it. When the kids can almost project what you're going to bring to them, then school is no longer fun. It's no longer engaging. It's no longer a place where I want to be. And so my organization coaches teachers, we coach school leaders, we do professional developments, I do speaking engagements, I motivate staffs, I motivate children, I do all of that. And then inside of all of that, I still do a whole lot of community work pro bono. I show up in my community every single day fighting to keep children from killing kids, from keeping kids from being killed. And when they do get killed, I'm the voice you hear at their balloon releases and at their funerals and things of that nature. So I still do all of that, even with trying to manage my life after the implosion of losing my job. And even my firm is hard because a lot of the things that I do are so intricately connected to schools, and the schools don't really want me there. So they don't really hire my firm. So I've been ghost hired before, like they'll hire a different firm, but that firm will contract with mine so that the school system doesn't look like they're contracting with me. I've been ghost hired before because they don't want people to know that they're working with me. So, I mean, it's very hard, but a lot of my work is advocacy and going into schools with families who have been harmed by the school or disserviced by the school, and they bring me in as their advocate, and more likely than not, they come out with a favorable outcome.
Mm-hmm. As you were talking, a couple of things came to mind. One, the work of turnaround and your company is what we call in the military boots on the ground, right?
Yes.
Doing the real work every day in classrooms, coaching teachers, demonstrating, coaching the principal. I know very well what that work looks like, and it's the type of ingredients to the recipe that actually moves the needle of progress.
Right.
It is. And so I'm hoping that others who are listening, who know they need boots on the ground when it comes to classroom management, when it comes to getting these new teachers through the year who have been thrown into the lion's den, who have no experience, and helping teachers inspire their principals. And so those type of organizations are really partners and allies. And I would say too, even for those in Louisiana, that it seems to me that they would want to have you as an ally. I was watching the news the other day, the world news, and how the United States of America is soliciting Russian hackers, right? So we can know how to do counter defense.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even make sense to have you villainized or portrayed as an antagonist, or on the opposite side of the fence, because you actually know and can identify problems before they arise and help work as an ally, as a solution, as an Wyatt Solutions Group to the problem, right?
Well, Dr. Martin, a lot of the times here, I've been told that I need to change, my approach or change the way I speak. And I was even told that it's not always good to be honest. Somebody told me that. And I just was flabbergasted, because I was just like, so it's not like you're saying what I'm saying is a lie. You're not saying what I'm saying is wrong. You're not saying that I'm not hitting the target with what I'm saying. You just don't like the way I said it. And you want me to not be as truthful in my calling out of it. That's what I've been told is my issue. They don't like that I loudly say the quiet parts. And that's what I've been told. I've even been told that if I want to work here, I have to learn how to play the game. And I just respectfully disagree with that, because I don't know, to your listeners to be spiritual or whatnot, but I know who I am and I know whose I am. And I know he made me just the way he made me for such a season as this one. And if I masquerade in being someone else, I can't be great at being me. I don't know how to do anything but be Dr. Ashonta Wyatt. I don't know how to censor myself to make other people comfortable when they're disservicing my children. I don't know how to do that. And I ask God all the time, to order my steps and to show me what it is that I'm not doing that is pleasing to him. And somehow every time a microphone comes up in my face, God speaks through me. And so that is my confirmation, because I never know what I'm going to say. I don't rehearse it. I don't think about it. I allow the truth to find its way to the surface. That is how I live. And if that's the wrong way, if that's keeping me from jobs, my only answer to that would be those are not the jobs that are for me. And that's just how I have to look at it, because how do you get angry with the truth? We can't fix a problem unless we're honest about the problem. And we just...
because I hear you loud and clear. That old saying they used to say, you can catch more
I've been told that.
Bees with honey than you can with vinegar.
Yes.
But there is a time when you need a boxer and Ali in your corner, because he wasn't quiet either. Muhammad Ali was loud. He spoke truth. He went against the grain. He went against the government based on his convictions. So like you said, there is a group, an organization, a community, schools, parents, teachers who need
Yes.
a fighter on their
Yeah.
side, you know?
And here's the thing, if you do right by my kids, maybe I will say it a little nicer. Like I don't know any people who go to war and they decide I'm not going to hit you that hard, or I'm not going to pull out that weapon. If you declare war on my children, you don't get to tell me how loudly to speak up against it. And that's just how I feel about it. And I tell people all the time as well, I love Malcolm and I love Martin. Some situations call for Malcolm, some situations call for Martin. And at the end of the day, they were more alike than they were different. Because if our goals align and what we're working toward aligns, the way you do it works for the people who do it your way. The way I do it works for the people who honor it the way I do it. And there's room for everybody in this work, because everybody doesn't like a soft-spoken leader. Everybody doesn't like a loud, aggressive leader, for lack of a better term. So there's somebody for everybody in terms of who you decide to get behind. But the only people that I ever care to affirm me are the children of this community. I fight for them. And they are the only people whose opinions I actually take to heart. And the children understand who I am, and they understand why I fight the way that I do, because like I tell them, if the people were doing right by you, then I wouldn't have to yell and scream and demand, right? But I've never, justice demands accountability, right? Like, and nobody's gonna like just give you the key to their castle when they know it's built on a whole bunch of lies. They're gonna throw everything that they can at you to keep you from discovering that it's not all it's cracked up to be. And this school system is not all it's cracked up to be. And that's the only thing that I care about dismantling, is the perpetuation that our schools are doing well. And they're not. Our kids can't read. They can't read.
The irony of it is, and we definitely don't have time to unpack this, is that when we hear parents who are not parents of color,
yes,
act loudly and
yes,
advocate and go on the hill and do everything else, then they are helicopter parents.
Yeah,
right? Who are operating out of concern for their children. But when it's parents of color, often more than not, they are perpetuated as an inconvenient, a nuisance, a problem. And so, it is, it's just something that we really have to have more conversations about.
Yeah.
About situations like this. I mean, even in your case, your son is in the system.
Yes.
So as a parent, you are invested in its success. Okay. The success is in the need and desire for them to succeed is embedded.
Yes. Yes. And at the heart of our conversation, and at the heart of a lot of the work that I do, is the realization that there's a whole lot of anti-Blackness from Black people, because they don't believe they deserve more than what the system is giving them. And so anytime you push against a system, and the system has given them any iota of anything, any crumb, they're going to fight you, because you're fighting a system that's feeding them crumbs, because they value the crumb, because they don't understand that it came from a whole pie that they can't even see, right? And so that's the hardest part of my job, and what I do for this community is fighting against Black people for the betterment of other Black people. Because you're employed by that school, so you feel like, oh, you're not going to talk about my school because it gives you a check. So that's the reason why you're fighting so hard for it. But do you realize that your school is an F school that is graduating kids year in and year out that are not even on grade level, sending them out into the world unprepared? You're not going to talk about that, but you're going to fight me because that's the job that gives you a check. And so that's what it's a lot of anti-Blackness. It's a lot of, I don't think that you deserve to have all of that, even if they're benefiting from it, right? Even if they're doing well in this community, they don't think that you deserve an opportunity to do well, because they want to be the only Black family inside that gated community with all their white neighbors, right? They want to be that token Black family that pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. They don't want that chance for everybody else. And it's very obvious when you hear people say stuff like, I paid my student loans, why would I want somebody to forgive student loans? What? Because it helps the entire economy. right? You should want people to not have to go through the strife that you went through. That's what you should want. That is how we evolve. But no, we fight each other because the system teaches us that, you know, we have to keep infighting. They have to keep us infighting so we don't focus on the real issue. And that's what at the heart of a lot of the work that I do is trying to educate people on what what they're entitled to.
Sure.
You know, you have rights. You know, you don't have to live like this. You know, if it's good for your family, why aren't they participating in it? But they're pushing it on you. You know, I tell people, don't feed me anything you wouldn't eat, right? Don't put it on my plate if you don't want it on yours. If it's not good enough for your child, don't give it to mine. And I think we could solve a lot of the world's ills by using that as a thought. If it is not good enough for your family, if you will fight against it for your family, then why would you so willingly sell that poison to my family?
Right. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. It's like a call. It's a national call for a family meeting, right?
Yeah.
Family meeting.
Or I call them community conversations. You know, when I talk about Black issues, I always talk about this, a community conversation. I'm not talking about anybody else's community. I'm talking to mine, the one that gave birth to me. You know, like we got to have honest conversations with each other so that we can prepare ourselves to activate in the broader scheme of things. And we can't activate because we're not having real conversations about what is in our best interest. You know. We definitely got to have a part 2 because I don't even think
we have to have a part 2 because I'm like, we just scratched the surface. We're not even even halfway through what we want to talk about. But before I let you go, I need 2 things from you. One, I've got to have a sneak preview from a documentary I hear you're a part of. And then and let people know how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to give, donate, hire, whatever. But going from 6 figures to 0, honey, that is
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
So the first thing is you don't have to have a sneak peek, Dr. Cecilia. It's on Hulu. All 5 episodes are out on Hulu. It's called Algiers America. It's a really, really dope docu-series that follows my high school, Edna Karr, and their football program. And we're using football as a vehicle to tell a much broader, deeper story about everything that our children have to face to overcome and to thrive. You know, all of those isms that are in the world and all of those roadblocks, you know, like poverty and crime and, you know, low paying jobs, all of the things we talked about on this call, you get to see them and their families navigate all of this. And then they still do extraordinary things on a football field. And they are all in college now. The kids that you're going to see in the documentary, they're playing football at a very high level in college. They're doing some wonderful things. So you don't need a sneak peek. You could just log on to Hulu and watch it and tell me what you think about it. It's called Algiers America. I am a consultant producer on the docuseries. Jackson Fager is our director, Fager Films. So shout out to Jackson Fager. He's our director and he had a wonderful eye for the type of story he wanted to tell. And our children were vulnerable enough to open up their lives to have their stories told. So I'm so extremely proud of the project. And you can reach me very easily. I'm Dr. Ashonta, Ashonta Wyatt, Wyatt, across all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Wyatt Solutions Group is a website online. You can look me up there. And my Cash App is the only thing that I have. It's Ashonta Wyatt, AshontaWyatt. It's my name. So if you care to donate to me in any way, shape, or form, you can do it there. Awesome. And my bank is Jefferson Financial. They're not everywhere though, which is why I never give out my banking information because it started off as being a union for teachers and then it morphed into a credit union for everybody. And so I've been a part of that bank for a very long time. But yes, so I'm glad to have started this conversation with you, and I look forward to the next one because I know there will be more. So
there will be more, and just so I have this correct, it's Algiers America. Is that ELGA? Am I saying that right?
It's Algiers, the neighborhood where I'm from. It's ALGIERS, Algiers.
Oh,
America.
okay. That's your
Mhm.
accent that was in there. I love it.
That was my yeah.
Look, I'm gonna have to listen. We're gonna have to meet in Louisiana with the beignets around the table
Yeah,
next time.
absolutely, absolutely. But it's called Algiers America, and it's on Hulu. And there are five episodes. They're all out right now. We release them one episode at a time, but because we're already past the last date of release, they're all up already. So you can binge watch it and let me know what you think. But shout
Mhm.
out to Figure Films and Anscape and Hulu, and ESPN and everybody that helped back this thing to get it out to the world. I'm very, very proud of it. Very proud of it.
Yes, as well you should be.
Yes.
Listen, I know we gotta go. I know you have another
Mhm.
appointment,
Yes.
but I am so grateful to have started this conversation with you.
Mhm.
Like I said, like you said, there'll be many more.
Many
Guys,
more.
please, I'm gonna post all this. All this, the information will be on iHeart and Spotify,
Okay.
Amazon Music, Audible, all the platforms, Google, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your music from. And
Mhm.
we will have the information listed there for the Hulu series so we can all binge watch it and give you your
Absolutely.
feedback. We're gonna have your
Mhm.
Cash App there. Come on, y'all, show this sister some love.
Thank you so
Who is
much.
and fighting a good fight for these children. So
Yes.
we gotta we're gonna keep up with you and be sending you our well wishes. And until the next time,
Mhm.
again, thank you again.
Thank you
And
so much for having me. And tell Tyler I say hi. We've been texting, but I mean messaging, but I've never met him. So
yes,
just
I
wanted to
sure
say
will.
hello.
I'll tell her. I will tell her you said hello. She's
Yeah.
doing her
Tell
best
her I say
work
hello.
life up in New York and Baltimore
Yes.
and all that good stuff. So
Listen, I'll actually be in the DMV area next week. I have a juvenile justice conference that I'm going to from Tuesday to Saturday. So, I'll be on Massachusetts, 901 Massachusetts.
okay, all right.
Yeah,
Look,
so maybe I can see Tyler and
yeah,
and
she might.
connect with her.
You might have a little paparazzi there when you get there.
Yeah, so tell her I say hello and thank you again for having me. And until next time, I look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, same here. All right, guys. Thank you again for tuning in, and as always, thank you for being a team player.